morning, and welcome to day 6 of our study on the book of Philippians. I hope you're all doing well, holding up okay during the quarantine, and remember, stay positive. You're going to see later in our study on Philippians that one of the things Paul says in this book is whatever is good, whatever is noble, fill your mind with these things. Such important advice, especially in this day and age. Fill your mind with good things. But let's look at where we're going to be this morning. We're going to be in chapter 2 of Philippians, verses 19 through 30. And remember, this letter was written as a thank you letter to the church for sending Paul a gift. And today we're going to see what the gift was and why it wasn't such a great gift and why Paul wanted to send it back. Have you ever gotten a gift that you wanted to send back? My wife does this to me all the time. She'll open up a gift from me and her response is, oh, I love it. Where did you get it? Why do you want to know where I got it? Yeah, but she sent back quite a few of my gifts, and one year I got even with her. When we first moved to Oregon, we built a home. And we moved into this house on Christmas Eve, believe it or not. We moved from our rental to a brand new house, Christmas Eve, moved a fully decorated Christmas tree. And on Christmas morning, here it is, our first morning in our new house, it's Christmas Day. And I had gotten my wife this. Isn't this the most, look, it's got a tail and everything. Is this not the ugliest thing you have ever seen? Let me get that up there close. Oh, horrible, isn't it? Well, my wife has very good taste when it comes to decorating, and I knew she was going to hate this thing. So I wrap it up, I get it all nice looking. It's one of the last things she opens on our first Christmas in our new house. And she opens it up, and I will never forget her response. And I had it wrapped so when she opened it up, that face was right there looking at her. And she saw it and went, oh, I said, honey, do you like it? She said, yeah. And I said, I thought maybe above the fireplace in our new house. What do you think? And she went, yeah. And I said, no, I've got a better idea. Let's put it on the front door so when people come up to the house, that's the first thing they see. And then, I'm not making this part up, my wife actually said in response to that, your office doesn't have a lot of decorations. I think it would look good in there. And that's when I lost it. That's when she knew, okay, this is a gift that I don't have to pretend to like because it's pretty awful. Paul had one of those gifts. The Philippian church had sent him a gift while he was in prison, and Paul was sending it back. Now, what was the gift? Interestingly enough, it was a person. They had sent him a man by the name of Epaphroditus, and his job was going to be to help Paul, to run errands for him while he's in prison, to take letters, take dictation for him, to do whatever was needed. Epaphroditus was going to help Paul. That sounds like a pretty good gift, but Paul is sending the gift back in this passage. Now, we need to know why he was sending it back, and we need to know the approach that he took and how this responds to things that we really can't use as we're serving God. It's actually an important passage with some great principles. So let's take a look at it. And we're in chapter 2, 19 through 30, but I'm going to skip around a little. I'm going to start in verse 25. So look at verse 25 with me, if you would. I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. For he longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard he was ill. Epaphroditus is sent as a gift, and he was there to help with ministry as Paul's in jail. Now, that seems like a great idea. Of course, Paul can use an extra hand, so we're going to send you Epaphroditus. He's a good guy, and he's going to be of tremendous help to you. Now, on paper, that's a great idea. But right after Epaphroditus shows up, he gets sick. And he gets so sick that he almost died. And now Paul has to take care of him. So in addition to Paul's duties, as he's writing letters in prison, he's trying to do what he can to keep the gospel going. And now he has to take care of Epaphroditus on top of that. Now let's be honest. Epaphroditus was supposed to be useful, but because he got sick, he became a burden. So as Paul wrote this letter, he's sending Epaphroditus back. But why? I mean, it sounds like he's gotten better now. This illness has passed. Epaphroditus is healing, so why not keep him there now? Because now he can actually do what he was sent for. He can actually be of use. So why was Paul sending him back? Was Epaphroditus that bad? He might have been. I mean, let's be honest. What Paul was doing here was kind of firing Epaphroditus. It didn't sound like he was as competent as he could have been, and that it was harder to have Epaphroditus there than it would be for Paul just to be alone. So, what's going on here? Look up at verses 19 through 20 now. I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare. All right? The church didn't need Epaphroditus coming back. They sent him to Paul. They didn't need him there. But Paul was sending them Epaphroditus, and he was sending them Timothy. Now, here's the interesting question. Where was Paul in jail? He was in the city of Rome. That is the key city in the world. If the gospel can take hold in Rome, it will spread all over. Rome was the gateway to the world at that time. So you would think Paul would need all the help he can get, and yet he's sending Epaphroditus back. He's sending Timothy back to the Philippian church. Why is Paul doing all this? Well, why wasn't Epaphroditus being kept around? Let's be really honest here. Epaphroditus was what I like to call a well-meaning obstacle. Let me say that phrase again, because it's important that we all understand exactly what that is. A well-meaning obstacle. An obstacle obviously is something that's in the way. Now, you can have some obstacles that are not well-meaning. You can have some people in your life that are just being interfering and just being difficult for the sake of being difficult. That wasn't Epaphroditus. He was well-meaning, but he was still an obstacle. Paul's purpose is to make as many disciples as he can to further the cause of the gospel as much as he can, even if he's in prison. And to do that, he's got to get rid of any obstacle, even well-meaning obstacles. And that's why he's sending Epaphroditus back. Let me ask you this. Do churches ever have well-meaning obstacles? All the time. All the time. A lot of times we'll have programs that just don't work anymore, but nobody has the heart to say, yeah, we should stop doing that. I love the cartoon in Leadership Magazine, which is a magazine for pastors. Great articles, but even better cartoons. And in this one cartoon, a pastor is talking to his wife, and he says, I don't understand how we had 75 votes to keep the Sunday night service going, but we only had 10 people at the service. All right, churches always have programs like that are kept going. They're just obstacles at this point. They're well-meaning obstacles. They serve their purpose at one point, but now it's really time to get rid of them. So the question here is, how? How do we get rid of them? How did Paul get rid of Epaphroditus? And how did he see Epaphroditus? Because it'd be awful easy to think of Epaphroditus negatively. But it's important that we understand Paul did not think of Epaphroditus in a negative manner at all. Epaphroditus was important. Look at verses 29 through 30 here. So then welcome him in the Lord. Actually, let me go back up to verse 28. Therefore, I am all the more eager to send him, so that when you see him, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. It's going to be your problem, not mine. But he says then, so then welcome him in the Lord. with great joy, get this part, and honor people like him. Honor him. Paul, I thought he was a failure. I thought he was a bit of a disaster. He's an obstacle. Maybe well-meaning, but he's an obstacle. Paul says honor him. Honor him. Why? Well, verse 30, because he almost died for the work of Christ. He almost died for the work of Christ. He risked his life to make up for the help you yourselves could not give me. Epaphroditus' ministry did not go well. But is he a failure? No. He risked something. He tried. You see, we look at failure the wrong way. For some reason, especially in American culture, we think that you have to succeed at everything right out of the gate. And if you're not succeeding, something's wrong. That's not how success works. Success works because you failed so many times that you finally learned how to do it. If you look, I'm a big nut for the history of NASA and the space race. And if you look when we first started sending rockets into space, they kept blowing up. We couldn't get them off the launching pad. They kept blowing up. And it was seen as almost a comical thing, but if you talk to any of the NASA scientists, they would tell you those were not failures. Because every time a rocket blew up, it taught us something. It taught us something that we were doing wrong. And we learned from those failures, and we built on those failures until we could succeed. Success is built on failure after failure after failure until you learn how to do it. As you are serving God, you are going to fail. Celebrate that. Do not be afraid of failure. Celebrate it when it happens, because every failure is going to teach you something. And the alternative to failure is not doing anything. I'll tell you right now, God can do great things with failure. God can do great things with our mistakes because we can learn from them. God can't do anything with our inactivity. He can't do anything with apathy. If you're afraid to try because you think you're going to fail, get out there and fail. And when you fail, celebrate it. Be that well-meaning obstacle. Keep failing, keep trying, because that's the secret to success. And then you will achieve great things. And when you see people failing, celebrate them. Celebrate the effort that they made. Celebrate their willingness to try great things. Celebrate that. And with well-meaning obstacles, don't keep them alive. Sometimes it's time to push them aside. And when you do, just like Paul did with Epaphroditus, celebrate it. Celebrate what it has accomplished. Celebrate what it tried to do. Let me close by telling you a story from when I was a very, very young preacher. I've been preaching since I was 30. And my first church that I was the senior pastor in was a wonderful church up in northern Idaho, Grangeville. I love that church, love it still today. We go back for a visit every now and then. They're one of our sponsoring churches for when we go to Africa. I had the best time of my life at that church. Great people. When I got there, they had just finished, well, they were almost finished building a new building, and it had a huge social hall. But they weren't intending to use that as the sanctuary. The sanctuary was still an old building that had been around for over 100 years. It was falling apart. It had rodent issues. It was damp, and it took a ton of money to heat that thing. But it had so much value. There's so many memories in that thing. And I knew what would be best would be for us to move in to the new building. But how do you tell people, it's time to get rid of the old building? Now remember, I'm a 30-year-old preacher. And the thing about 30-year-old preachers, it's not that we don't know what we're doing, it's that we don't know what we're doing. But fortunately, this is probably the one thing when I was that young I actually did right. I went and I found some of the older people in the congregation who had been around forever. And I asked them to write down memories that they had of that church building. Talk about seeing your grandchildren get baptized in that building. Talk about seeing them get married in that building. And I shared all those memories one Sunday, and we celebrated everything that had happened in that church over the years, in that building. Everybody who had come to the Lord, everybody had a life-changing thing happen in that church. And I said, what a great history it has. Now it's time to go start a new history in the new building. Do you know, we moved into that building with absolutely no opposition. A few months later, we tore down the old sanctuary, and today, long after I left that church, but today they have built a new sanctuary on the site of the old one. And that church is going great today and doing fantastic things for Jesus because they celebrated what was now something they needed to move on from. It wasn't seen as a failure. It wasn't seen as throwing something away. It was celebrated. Celebrate your failures. Celebrate your well-intentioned obstacles. Celebrate the things that you need to move on from, and keep looking to Jesus. That's our lesson for today, and we will be back tomorrow. Have a great day, and remember, keep thinking positively. God bless you.